why, but the concept. So when you look at groundwater pollution, and it kind of makes sense, some of it, and then others won't. You know that reactions are going to be slower because the conditions are not favorable. The flow is slower, it's darker, there's no outside air. Does that make sense? So, there's going to be a slower flow, so dilution of contaminants is going to be slower. There's going to be less dissolved oxygen, and there's going to be fewer decomposing bacteria. In comparison to surface water, is what they're saying. Now, when there's groundwater pollution, why is that a topic of concern? That's a good answer because we tap into groundwater to supply our water needs. What else? So groundwater cycles into a large body of water like a lake or a river, and we're going to tap into that lake. So now we're tapping into contaminated water, which obviously we're going to filter, and you have to learn the filtering process. So we're going to talk about other major pollution. Wastewater actually is water like that leaves your house. So you're kind of thinking of like sewer water, but it does produce this thing called sewage sludge. And it's full of toxic chemicals, obviously, because it's waste water from your home, which is kind of mixed in with everything that you put through that system. What do you think that looks like, that could be used for? Because it actually has some benefits. Cultural eutrophication, artificial eutrophication, or human-caused eutrophication leads to an oligotrophic lake or hyper-eutrophic lake, yes? Which is where you have a lake with excessive amount of nutrients. These nutrients come from runoff of nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizers and cleaning products. It's mainly a result of industrialized agriculture, okay? We have to add excessive fertilizer to increase crop yields. So then it can't be used up by the plant fast enough, so it ends up being dissolved by the water and then infiltrating, percolating. And it ends up in the body of water through the water cycle. And this leads to algae growth or algae bloom. I should change that from growth to bloom, because the bloom means the algae is overpopulated, and then the algae dies, and bacteria or decomposers that are oxygen demanding, so BOD, will, reduce the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. And then another process could be that light is reduced, so that's alternative route, which also leads to less oxygen because there'll be less photosynthesis, and then fish suffocate and die. We know this, so that's already two things on this test that you know. Actually, and you knew the first slide. So you increase temperature, and what happens?
Wait, so we are having a test?
Good. Dissolved oxygen drops. This comes from power plants and industry that dumps heated water back into the body of water. What type of water accumulates the most pollution? So my question is, lakes or rivers? Why? Because they're so lakes have more pollution because they don't flow. Okay, so without flow, you're gonna have more pollution or more less dilution is really the reason. And they both have biodegradation. Rivers and streams can dilute and pollution better due to the flow. So this is water treatment, and water treatment definitely comes out on the AP exam, and the order will be required of you. It'll give you like a multiple choice style question, and you have to put them in order. So first thing, and if you visit our water treatment plant, you actually can see this exact process taking place. Christian, so the first thing you do is filter large particles or like rocks or anything that's big. It goes through a filter or like a sediment remover, and if you look at the picture, you could see that water's filtered through screens. So the water flows through these screens and the particles get collected. Then the second step is coagulation. And that basically involves addition of aluminum to the water supply so that bacteria can be removed. So they're like killing organic living pathogens. That's what they're trying to do. Then it goes through a second filter, and this you're gonna, where you're gonna have the little particles that got through the first filter, they're gonna filter even more. So you have first filtration, coagulation, second filtration. Then comes chlorination, which basically, and you could kind of taste this sometimes in your water. They add chlorine to prevent any future bacteria. So first you remove the bacteria with aluminum, and then you add chlorine to the water to prevent any growth of bacteria. Remember when we did the secession lab, I had to age the tap water. Basically that meant put the water in a bucket, leave it for 24 hours so the chlorine can evaporate. Because if we wanted organisms to thrive in an environment, chlorine would have stopped them from being able to do that. So, aeration. This is actually really cool. I've seen this tower in the Hialeah plant. They separate the molecules so that they can remove unwanted odor or gases. So, and it improves taste. And then it comes back together as droplets. And then additional treatment, not every plant has it, but it's where you're gonna add, which ours does. It adds fluoride and sodium, lime, all these things for flavor and for nutritional purposes to make it drinkable.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and here's a picture of the water filtration system, except the order seems off. What's missing, if I ask you that question? Or what's off?
Chlorination.
Chlorination is not there. Well, they put disinfection, so. Aeration, even though that looks like it might be somewhat of that system. What else can you tell me? By looking at this diagram,
Filtration.
if I give you this diagram, what can you tell me is wrong? What about it? Okay, the first filtration is backwards. See, this should go here, yes?
Yeah.
And then coagulation, and then second filtration, and then disinfection, and then aeration. Good. So it was off. They started with coagulation, and then they went into the two filtering systems. And guess what? Is that necessarily wrong? Maybe not. But on the AP exam, it would be. Is that terrible or what? Because this is the way I used to teach it for years. They put coagulation first, and then sedimentation, and then filtration. So it was basically add aluminum to remove bacteria, then filter. It makes more sense. Remove large boulders, right? Then add the aluminum. Then filter again. That kind of makes sense to me, but this makes sense too. And on the AP exam, the answer was the one I showed you before. I told you how I know all these things, right? Because how would I know? I've never taken the AP exam.
So what we'll go first in yours would be storage, filtration, then coagulation.
What?
The one you're showing us now, what would be the first step? Is it filtration, then coagulation?
Correct. My first year that I taught AP with no book, I had my students come and give me all the, like, you do the first 5, you do the second 5.
Oh, you memorize them?
And they memorized them and brought them back.
That's smart.
They were pretty successful too. And then other years they come, Mr. Rango, there was this question, and then I start, oh yeah, that's it. Because they've only released 2 exams ever in environmental. How about in bio? How many were released? Do you know?
It changed when we took it last year.
Oh, that's
Yeah. That was great.
I heard it was easier.
No.
What?
It was harder.
Actually, yeah, it probably was harder because the percent passing rate dropped.
It was all
For mine too,
The national pass rate was the lowest for bio last year.
and for environmental.
because it was nothing like memorize. Like you couldn't memorize anything.
yeah.
Everything was applying.
Wait, apparently only like out of the entire nation, only 3 people got everything right, like on the test.
Wow, how do you can know that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you know that people in California take the test 3 hours after us, right?
Yeah, they do that with the SAT too. But that's
So I'm curious how much their percent rate is higher than ours, because all they have to do is have one friend here
You don't think they have different forms?
Yeah, but they should be sleeping.
But if they do the exam 3 hours, by the time we're finishing, they're starting.
No, I still remember some of the questions from the 18.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
What?
Is it 3 hours or 4?
What?
Yeah, because of the time change. There's a 3-hour time change, then there's a 4-hour.
But imagine Hawaii.
What?
How many hours?
5.
So their pass rate must be the highest.
What was the question?
That's right, the only thing that.
Plus, they're so environmental. They know everything.
The only thing that.
That question was, you remember that?
Was
For
what?
the 80 bios. You said something about like racking like.
Oh, yeah.
Yes!
That was like the weirdest question.
No, I had the one where you have to design your own little patch.
Are you looking at statistics?
No one touched weirdest.
Me either.
Oh yeah. I got you.
That's good. I thought Justin had
So what was the percentage?
I do not stop, continue.
Yeah, I thought it was stop. I looked for it. I saw the word stop.
I said no.
The grits?
Yes.
I guess.
7, 23, and
Do not
78.
stop, keep going.
She's like, oh, just.
Yeah, but let's do
Stop.
I had the same problem.
23 and 7.
I
So did I. I thought I was gonna solve it. Look, last year's environmental 46% passing.
What? So most people fail.
And bio was like 20%.
7% got a 5.
7% of the world only. And I had one.
23 got a 4, and
Ooh.
16 got a 3.
Environmental.
Yeah. Because 4s is a hot in the whole nation. And I had
Take it.
69
Really?
of my students passed, 69%.
Chris Betancourt
Did you buy
passed.
a cake?
I didn't have first Betancourt. No, I didn't.
We didn't take it.
No, totally different. And I'm bad with names.
Were you excited? Did you buy a cake?
No, I was sad. Because nobody was 70. But I didn't realize that the numbers dropped, so I was, but I knew it.
It'll be 100%.
Can you tell me what bios was? Can you send me that?
He said he was an HP. What a liar.
5%?
Why
So
is
2% less than
environmental
me.
the hardest? Are they because they never-
Bio's harder, for sure.
No, last year was the first year that
So
they
you're
made
gonna get a 5 in
They
mine.
made it test.
They'll make it all like that.
Take
If you
bio
study.
and environmental.
They removed the natives.
Because this is also new information, so bio you've been learning your whole life, of course not at that
I
level.
guess it's hard.
And then in college you learn it again.
This.
Mr. Rainbow, for this.
What, you like the environment?
Yeah, they removed all the natives, like, you know, like.
I know.
It was very.
Boom. How about plants?
No, that was there.
Oh, was it?
That was
The
there.
whole thing was
And
fine.
we never learned that, so.
Wait, there was one
We didn't learn
question.
flat.
And there was a whole essay on plants.
Let me
There was a
think.
lot of stuff that we didn't know.
There was one question
All
about.
right, I guess I'll stop.
Yeah, whales.
Whales.
No, that one where you had to be like, which one of these would be the intermediate ancestor? Do you remember that question?
I
Yeah, they're
remember
like,
the one where it was like this, the whale dies and like it's sperm or something.
I thought that we're talking about plankton. I don't know.
I have no idea. No, the plankton eats the whale gives out sperm, like what happens, like the plankton.
How big is a whale?